I have a bit of a question for myself today. And that is, how do you handle disappointment as an adult? I know it shouldn't, but disappointment always to me feels a little bit childish. I'm not sure why. Maybe because I suffered it more strongly when I was a kid, but then what do you do when you're no longer a kid? And you feel like you just gotta suck it up, but sucking it up kind of just hurts more. First off, it's probably important to define what is disappointment. I was literally gonna say, if they don't have my favorite sauce here, that would be a disappointment, but they do. I think in its simplest, disappointment is ultimately a misalignment between expectations and the reality that results, whatever comes along. For example, if you're expecting there to be mixed frozen berries and there aren't mixed frozen berries, which has happened the last couple of times I've been to the store, you might be a little disappointed. But I don't think it's just that misalignment of expectation and reality, because you might also not really care. You might be like, I thought there would be, but there aren't. I think it's when you're really looking forward to those mixed frozen berries, the shake you're gonna make with it, just the color that you're gonna lose from that shake. If the emotional expectation, the hopes are high, that's where the disappointment comes in. It fills that gap of like really high expectations and hopes, and then a zero reality. It's kind of the opposite of like a positive surprise. Like, for example, when they finally started carrying Chalula in my grocery store. Chalula? Hot sauce in France? This doesn't happen. You gotta go to a specialty shop. And to find it in the grocery store with options, a little bit more expensive than it was earlier, but this is a huge boon just to life in general. And so now that emotional expectation is that much higher, and now that I expect it to be here, if it's not here and I'm out of hot sauce, well, you get the point. But how do we handle that disappointment then as adults? And drinking hot sauce is not a good response. Click, clack. I think a big part of the reason that disappointment for me seems associated with childhood is because when you're a kid, that's when your expectations can be the biggest. Your hopes and your dreams, you don't know any better. And then as an adult, you spend a lot of your time trying to mitigate those expectations. One of those strong memories from childhood for me, and don't worry, Dad, I don't hold this against you, but I just remember having plans to play catch with my dad one afternoon, and then going into his office and being like, "Are you ready to play catch?" And he still had to work, and I didn't get to play catch with him that day. It sounds silly now as an adult, obviously, but that's crushing as a kid. You're just like, but I've been waiting for this all day. It's kind of the emotion we're talking about here. But also that depth of emotion, I guess it's the pain that makes us run the other way from having high hopes and high expectations, but are we robbing ourselves of something in the process? My sister actually shared this story on Instagram yesterday for Valentine's Day, but I completely forgot about this. When she was 7 years old, she saved her savings. She put all her money away in her tiny little allowance, and she bought each and every one of us in our family a Valentine's Day present. She left it on the table for us to find at dinner, and I guess none of us cared. At least we didn't respond in the way she was hoping for. And we didn't get her anything either. Thankfully, my dad felt bad about it at least, and then wound up going and getting her something, but I didn't make up for it. She was deeply disappointed. And I feel you, Karin, and I'm sorry for that. These moments stick with us. Like, this isn't small stuff, right? Disappointment as a child trains us away from having high hopes and expectations for life as adults, which is why I'm coming back to like, is it robbing us of something by running away from it? The reason that this is like top of mind for me right now is because it's been a lot of work to get the store up and running, the shirts sold, putting these shirts together. I'm not wearing one right now for the first time in a few days. I mean, it's been a ton of work. And last night we ran into some technical difficulties that ran the risk of meaning that we wouldn't be able to actually launch on time. And I found myself struggling with a little bit of disappointment. And thanks to today's patron producer, David Brooker, and all my patrons for not disappointing me. The opposite. You guys are great. I'm so grateful to have you. So what are some ways that you can actually practically deal with this? Because I feel like disappointment is something that can actually be really hard to handle. Maybe not for you, but for me, it's an emotional state it's actually pretty taxing. Like I feel a little bit taxed by it right now. I think the first thing is, like, it depends on obviously what you're disappointed by. But the first thing would be to reset expectations. Not in the sense that I'm resetting them saying like, oh, I never needed that in the first place. Like, I'm fine. I'm not trying to lie to myself. But to stop, and in the example of like technical problems, it's more important and more valuable to me to delay launching the store, to delay launching the shirts, than it is to cause any problems for anybody else. Like, my reputation, the trust that exists, needs to be maintained at all costs. And so it's actually more important to do that. It is the potential cost of the mistake, which is something that makes it, obviously makes the disappointment and the potential stress very real. But at the same time, like if I look at it, I'm like, okay, like, you know what? If we have to slow down, we have to stop and do this a little, a different way, that helps to mitigate it because it helps to refocus me on the thing that matters most to me in the moment. And that's going to be that trust. But not all disappointments can be like reframed in that way because sometimes they just are what they are. Like, let's say hypothetically, you were talking to somebody that you're interested in and you'd gone on a couple of dates, and then while you were on a trip to, I don't know, somewhere like Thailand, they decided to get back with their ex. Not that that's ever happened to either of us, obviously, but in that moment, there's nothing else you can really do about it. In a similar way, I think there's a reframing element to that, which is like, well, first off, hopefully that's better for them. Like, hopefully they're actually genuinely happy. And also, hopefully that means there's somebody better for me out there. In fact, I was not convinced that this was going to be the right person anyway, so it just kind of gives me an answer more than anything. Underlying that, because obviously the reframing might not always feel totally honest to ourselves, it can only really help us if we are honest with ourselves and allow ourselves to feel whatever it is we're feeling. The disappointment, the stress, the sadness, to dig into whatever it is that's at the root of that. Like, why am I disappointed? What was I expecting? What was I hoping? That isn't going to happen now. And as you dig into that, being open to whatever feelings come and letting them pass on through, observing them, taking stock of them, and letting them go. I don't know that I have any more practical advice for disappointment than that, because the one thing is I would rather do that than numb myself by reducing all my hopes and expectations to zero and refusing to aim high or to have high hopes. I think that the life that I'm going to live is one that's full of risk. I'm going to take lots of chances. I'm going to dream big. I'm going to be ambitious. And that pretty much guarantees that I'm going to be disappointed along the way. And rather than avoiding that disappointment by reducing the risks, by not taking them, by trying to play it safe, I think I need to find an appropriate and healthy way of dealing with that disappointment so that when it comes, because it's going to come, like I've been experiencing recently, well, either I can get knocked down and stay down and just kind of lower the bar to wherever it is I'm lying at the time, or I can pick myself back up and find a way of dusting myself off and preparing for the next round. Because that's really the only way of continuing to live a life where we pursue our dreams. At least that's the way it feels to me today. So hopeful, definitely a little bit sad, tired. I've been pretty stressed dealing with all this stuff behind the scenes as well, but I buy it. I think it's a brighter future ahead of us. Don't you, Cooper? Yeah, Cooper's been down here the whole time, hiding in construction. He's a sneaky little guy. Gotta watch out for this one. Huh, buddy.